And Shedeur Sanders is going to have to maybe work his way out of now being, a fifth-round pick over to the Browns. He goes to Cleveland, where it's a very crowded QB room. We have the Deshaun Watson of it all. Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Joe Flacco. Despite sliding, it feels like the vibes were still high.
Travis Hunter is on FaceTime.
He's on FaceTime, yes. I love that. But, Mike, I'll start with you. What is it going to take for Shedeur Sanders to be successful in the NFL? And that starts, I feel, with winning the starting quarterback job in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously going to help, but I think it wouldn't be the worst thing for him to spend a year as a backup in Cleveland. Obviously, there's not a guy that you feel great about in that quarterback room. So if anyone were to win it, I think Shedeur would be the most exciting if you're a Browns fan. But I think that wouldn't hurt him because there are some serious things on his tape when I watch that I worried about. One is how he handles pressure and just how the sacks he takes. If he's behind an offensive line the way it looked in Cleveland last year, it just would be really ugly because of the way he holds on to the football, the amount of sacks he takes. I mean, it would look like what Deshaun Watson looked like, quite frankly, early on last season. So I'm not sure it necessarily needs that, but I do think that he needs to come in with a attitude that's different than, what he had at Colorado, which was basically knowing that he was the guy from day one. I think he needs to come in open to the competition and putting his best foot forward day in and day out. I think this could be the best thing that ultimately happens to him, similar to the way Tom Brady, when he fell to the sixth round, was.
I'm just so glad we're talking about this because I feel like it hasn't been covered enough. Shedeur Sanders, like a fifth round. I feel like it hasn't gotten enough conversation.
We really haven't dove in at all,
I'm really glad we've been able to talk about this. I agree with everything you said, but here's what I will say. The conversation, the narrative, all the conversation that's gone has been a lot of negativity. People have been complaining. It's been this spark plug, and people have very strong opinions. Nobody has handled it better than Shedeur.
Yeah.
He has not complained. He didn't make any excuses. He didn't try to criticize people who are criticizing him. And even more importantly, the reaction that he showed there. He was excited for this opportunity. If he keeps that mindset, and I heard an interview of him on the radio where he was like, I am grateful for this opportunity. I'm excited to go to Cleveland. If he goes into that locker room and goes into that quarterback room with that attitude, I think he's got a great chance to succeed. And because the lack of competition around him. But as far as will he succeed in the NFL, give me a coin. And that goes for Cam Ward. That goes for every quarterback in this draft in the last 50 drafts. You just don't know. I think situational, I think Kevin Stefanski's system is a good fit for him. But I do think he's the type of quarterback that needs a good supporting cast, which is why I think with you, I think sitting back, watching Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett or Dylan Gabriel, probably not Dylan Gabriel.
I was going to say,
you want to beat him out
on a limb.
But you're probably going to see Flacco end up being the starter. And Flacco is a guy who's played a long time in the NFL, and he's a guy that guys like playing with because he's approached the game the right way. He's a student of the game. He's not somebody that can go out there and just make plays off the cuff and scramble around if nothing's there. Shedeur is that type of player. He needs to win from the pocket and win with his mind. And as long as he checks his ego at the door, which I think he will, I think he'll approach it, and I think he'll win over a lot of his critics.
And critics, right? That's the main word when we're talking about Shedeur. And we actually have a quote here, and this is from Merrill Hodge explaining why he feels Shedeur will not succeed, saying, quote, I use a scale from 1 to 10. So good is around a 5. If you're a 5, you're not a first rounder. You're not going to be a franchise guy. Going on to say there's some toughness to him. But how he moves, he ain't gonna put fear in anybody, end quote. DK, what do you make of critics when people say things like that before a guy even plays one snap in the NFL?
I think it's it's harsh, but I do think that's a reality. I had Shedeur as somebody I thought should have gone in the second round, but with the trend of overdrafting guys, I was like, maybe Pittsburgh would take him at 21. Then you started to look at the lack of teams that actually needed a franchise quarterback or a starting quarterback, and it really whittled down to 3. And the Giants liked Jackson Dart better. The Saints liked Tyler Shuck better. And it was kind of like, uh-oh, now what? And the Browns like Dylan Gabriel better. But now he gets the opportunity to compete and go in there and try to win him over. So I do think this is a great opportunity for him to go into. And he's been dealing with criticism since probably Pee Wee football. Because of his last name, people have said, oh, this. But there has also been a trend, too. It is becoming a prerequisite that you have to have escapability. And the days of being a pocket passer, which Shedeur truly is, are kind of going by the wayside. You've got to be mobile, and you've got to be really an elite passer of the football, top-tier arm strength and accuracy, which he's not exactly elite. So I think that also hurt his stock as well.
Yeah, at least we give credit as well, because something you mentioned earlier was how he handled the situation. I know as well during his interview after he was drafted, he said, look, I probably could have done a few things a little bit different. So you're already seeing that growth just within this process. We go from Shedeur Sanders, who is a fifth-round pick, to Quinn Ewers, who surprisingly went from being the #1 prospect in the country coming out of high school to being a 7th rounder. I do think it's interesting, Mike, when you look at his situation, competing for the backup spot with Zach Wilson. So to me, feels like there's a realistic chance there, just depending on how camp goes. But before we even get to that, how in the world did we get here seeing Quinn Ewers as a 7th-round pick to Miami?
He just didn't get better, right? From his first year as starter to his last at Texas. And then he comes with the worst, we talk about Tyler Shuck's injury history. I think Quinn Ewers is even worse because it's soft tissue injuries, and it's every single year of his career. All 3 as a starter at Texas, he had soft tissue injuries that missed time, and his last year of high school. So that's his last 4 seasons. He has not made it through a full season. And if you're a quarterback in the NFL, that's the last thing you want to see. That's the last thing you want at that position if you're an NFL head coach. So I think that was the biggest thing. And then just look at this guy's body. He hasn't transformed at all. And that's work ethic. That's what is he doing, when it's not the bright lights. Because he's shown up in big stages for sure. But I just haven't seen the development year on year.
And Danny, obviously it was a big, topic of conversation, him returning to college. What is that going to do for his career? I believe we have some receipts, maybe a tweet from you that we're going to pull up. But anyways, his performance in that Michigan game, what are your thoughts here? Quinn Ewers has made himself a boatload of money today. He's looking like a #1 overall pick.
So in that game,
after that game,
that was his best game. Well, he played great against Alabama in Tuscaloosa the year before, beat Alabama in their own stadium. That did not happen against Nick Saban. You just did not see that happen many times. I thought he played like a first-round pick in that one. The thing is, and Mike made a great point, you've got to put 12 games like that together.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he did not. And if you remember, after that, Michigan was the next game where he handed off and hurt that oblique. And I do think it really did impact his ability to rip the football down the field and showcase some of that arm talent that was one of the reasons he was the highest sought-after recruit of that high school class. But you start breaking down the film, they're going to look at your worst games, not your best games. And unfortunately, that's what I saw.
Man, they just love pulling out your old tweets.
This is a better one. This is a better one.
Yes.
This was when he announced, and there were reports where he was being offered $8 million, which I don't think were true, which I noted subsequently. But even if he could have made $4 million, strictly from a financial decision, I think it was a mistake for him to come out. Now, I appreciate that he said that he wanted his legacy to be as a Texas Longhorn, and he didn't want to play for everybody else. He'll be a legend around the state of Texas for his entire life because of that decision. But ultimately, when it comes down to dollars, I think it was a mistake. But I also think he got bad intel from his advisors, possibly from the NFL, when they evaluate a grade and say, I think he probably was told he was going to be a 3rd-round pick and maybe a 4th-round pick at worst. He drops to the 7th. That's more money that you lost. And unfortunately, it's going to be a harder time for him to make a team as a 7th rounder.
Mike, let me ask you this, because I kind of sprinkled it in there, the backup job in Miami. We know that the Dolphins brought over Zach Wilson, who has just had this tumultuous career to this point. But when you look at this room specifically, I see Tua, a guy who has a really high chance of missing some games this year just based on how he plays and how he refuses to take care of his body. You've got Zach Wilson, a guy who was drafted #1, #2 overall a few years ago. He's kind of bounced around. And then you've got Quinn Ewers, a guy with a chip on his shoulder. So realistically, Mike, is there a world in which we see Quinn Ewers get some minutes this year?
I think so, just given to his injury history, right? And the fact that if it turns the keys over to Zach Wilson, he could go south very fast. So I think that's a realistic chance, but I doubt he wins the backup job just given a rookie versus a vet now at this point, Zach Wilson.
Who's played in multiple systems, probably a little bit more familiar with NFL schemes, but I do think he has a great opportunity. That's the one thing you've got to try to focus on the positive if you're Quinn Ewers and Shedeur to some extent. Look at the opportunity you're going to make an impact and compete against Zach Wilson, who, yes, is a top 5 pick. He has these, he flashes when he throws against air, but it hasn't translated in the NFL. You can last a long time, and you can make the most of an opportunity if you come in, go to work, maybe improve your strength, get in a weight room, but with your mind as well. And I think that's where Tua doesn't have a lot of elite traits, but he is very accurate and he's a great decision maker. And Quinn Ewers his decision making has been suspect at times. He's made some throws that you kind of question. He's got to eliminate some of those, but I think it's a great opportunity for him to make a roster, which is a start. You've got to get that opportunity first.
Yeah, we'll see them. I believe rookie minicamp for the Dolphins is later this week, so we'll get a chance to see them and see what Quinn Ewers can do. It's certainly interesting to see how far he has fallen, but we'll keep our eye on it as well as all of the upcoming things as the new NFL season has officially begun. May 1st, the first day we're looking at, making sure to pay attention to those fifth-year options, and then we get rookie minicamp coming up as well. And then before you know it, we'll be talking about the 2025 season at Hall of Fame game on July 31st.